I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the next reel. When the movie
Jesus.
Welcome to the next reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Ju-on the Grudge is over. Thanks for the effort. Okay, here we are. It's Ju-on the Grudge. I did some heavy-duty Ju-on this weekend. Heavy-duty. I did them all. All of the ones in this tier. The Ju-on the Grudge, the American remake.
Basically, you did everything that's titled Ju-on the Grudge.
I pretty much did. And the remake of that with John Cho. And so I am so grudged.
I think that one's more of a reboot, right?
Well, you would think so. There's a lot of sort of shot for shot stuff going on in it. Like it definitely is the thread of this one. So I did all the grudges. Woof, man.
Did you call that a grudge match?
How did I miss that? That was really good. That was really good. I feel like less of a human being for missing that.
I don't even know how you could have missed that one.
Where
I might just say my ad is themed around that. So
we'll
get to that.
Okay. So we are talking about Ju-on the Grudge, Takashi Shimizu, year 2002. It's another tight 92 minutes, Japanese horror, supernatural curse. And this is the first theatrical release of this particular sort of set of characters. We transcend Japanese V horror.
This is the first theatrical one because the life of the V horror versions, the Curse and the Curse 2, I think largely it was the Curse 2 more than even the Curse, was discovered on video, and people tuned in and really loved how creepy it was. And so suddenly video stores were getting requests to carry it. And so Hollywood came a calling, let's just say. Or no, that's not Hollywood. The studios came a calling and said, hey, let's put some money into this and make a big budget version of it. And that's really kind of what we get here is kind of I suppose you could say a retelling in a way of the story and kind of resetting things for us in the world of this cursed house and the brutal murders that happened within it. And it's really kind of a chance for Shimizu to start again, I guess, especially for people who had never seen it before. And honestly, other than kind of like the people who were discovering the Curse films on VHS, this was, including me, the first Grudge film that people saw. And I think to that end, you can walk into this one again. It's kind of a reset, so you don't need to have seen the first two films to really watch this film. And I think for many people, the reason that they probably connect with this one so much is because it was the first of these Ju-on films that they ever watched.
100% agree with that. I think that's I totally get it. The thing that I think is interesting about about this movie in particular, in comparison, just because we're coming off of the Curse movies, is that I actually found the ghost stuff, the kid and the woman and the cat, even more scary in the video versions. I thought they were more haunting. I thought they were somehow neutered here in a way that was not threatening. And I don't know if that's just because of the texture of the actual sort of presentation, that maybe it was just too clean and they weren't able to do enough to dirty it up. But I found the originals more haunting.
Well, when you say dirty it up, like, what do you mean specifically? Like, it's not the originals aren't like grungy.
No, but there's a certain sort of video texture to it when you're watching it. And this, it opens up and it's clean and pristine and it looks like a movie. And maybe it was a treatment of makeup or eye treatment, but I just never found the ghosts threatening. I can't quite put my finger on it, But I look back, I look at stills, and there's something about stills, like the cover of this movie feels like a still from the original of the Toshio, and it's scarier than anything in the movie of Toshio. The cover.
Interesting. Well, and I mean, for this conversation, I think I'm going to have to work on kind of separating myself from having seen this one first.
Yeah.
Like I actually saw this one first. You didn't. You saw the American remake of this, and that was the only Grudge film you'd ever seen.
Right.
So this was my first entry into this franchise, and then the American. I think maybe the first. I definitely the first, maybe the second, and that was all I had seen of the franchise. And so now that I've seen The Curse and The Curse 2, I mean, there is an element that I can, I can acknowledge that, sometimes there is this, there's something that like an indie filmmaker has when they're forced to work with a low budget and a tight schedule and be, extremely crafty in how they put shots together and, condense their storytelling into fewer shots because the lack of time, et cetera, et cetera. And just, they're just kind of like, flying by the seat of their pants largely. And you see that often. And then when they suddenly have this massive budget, it's hard to determine, like, you have so much extra time and you have so much extra money to play with, and all these different departments that have so much more money as well. And how do you reshape your thinking when you suddenly are in that position? And, I think it's fair to say that there is an element to that of, the struggle that filmmakers have when suddenly they're given lots of money to play with. And I mean, I can see that there. I guess for me, though, I didn't really have that same issue with the ghosts and everything. And it wasn't like a curse of recency, because I had just watched The Curse and The Curse 2. And so it's not like I'd watched them all so close together and suddenly I just couldn't take it. I couldn't buy into it anymore because I'd seen it too often. It's not like I didn't run into that issue. I guess it for me, I don't know. I find them effective and interesting. And I think that Shimizu is doing some interesting things with the story here that he hadn't really explored in the previous ones. And so, so I guess
let's dig into that. Let's dig into the story treatment that connected with you.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a particular thing that connected. I just liked the story. I think it's an interesting story. I love the way that he crafts these stories out of chronological order. And so you're getting bits and pieces and clues. Like we start after kind of the opening, the real high contrast, nearly black and white, but little splashes of color,
right?
Flashes that we get of watching Kayako and family getting killed by her husband.
Very efficient, very cool. I'm
and
on
very
board for that.
Yeah, very easy way to do that. Then we're kind of jumping into the stories right away, and we're getting, like, we see Rika, the what would you call that? Like a health worker.
Yeah,
like coming
Social
over
worker
to the house to do a check, a health check on an old woman who's living there, and we see the house is totally a mess. There's stuff everywhere. When she ends up going upstairs, we see some leaks laying on the ground. Later, when we're watching, it's Hitomi's story or Katsuya's story, one of their stories, we actually see somebody coming home with a bag of groceries, and there are leaks in it. And so little clues like that you're getting, okay, so this actually took place beforehand. And so you're starting to piece these things together as you're as we're following the story. And it's not like it's original, like he had done that with the previous film. We'd already seen that play out. But what we get here is, especially as we get to the end, like a much bigger time jump that suggests that this is something that could potentially go on for a while. And now we're getting like this massive shift in time showing that Kayako will be around for potentially forever. Right. And so like that's an element that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I think and I have to also separate the fact that I watched the first two movies before this. Like, I almost wonder if I should have like somehow done it your way and watched this first, because this is how arguably most people discovered this series. And would it have been more effective or creepier or, more sort of haunting had I not seen the earlier films? Because in some respects, this film is the his sort of, I don't want to say perfect, but his sort of, evolution of his original idea delivered in the way he probably saw it in his head before he had to make it as an indie on video, right? Like there's just, when he's out from under the weight of necessity to deliver effects and deliver those things. Yeah. And so I think I do it a disservice coming to it from those first ones so fast, because I did find I actually liked the earliest interpretation better than this movie, and some of that is because repetition just kills surprise, and there are so many beats in this movie that are directly owing to the first movies that I had just watched that I did not. I feel like Ju-on relies on a very small set of scare tools, right? And once you've seen them, you can predict when they're going to be utilized. And Kayako's crawl and Toshio's mew and the death rattle and a sudden appearance in the frame, and they're all super effective the first time you encounter them. But this movie these movies do them over and over again to the point that they lose their bite. They lose their bite, and I think that's what I'm suffering from. Doing these in series, I think is has illuminated the scare template of these movies, and tension dropped for me.
Well, I mean, that's interesting because like there are new things that Shimizu's also playing with in this franchise. Like we're seeing more than just Kayako and Toshio, right? Like we're seeing 3 dead schoolgirls popping up that are somehow now ghosts that are cursed to, I don't know, work with or follow Kayako.
Servants of Kayako. Yeah.
Yeah. We're seeing her husband reappear as kind of a ghostly, threatening presence at one point. The way that Kayako appears around people and within people, like there are some new things that we're seeing some different things. Yeah.
Crawls out of her belly.
Yeah. Right. Like
that was good. That was good.
Like we're seeing some interesting changes here. And I think that's interesting. And the way that the scares are built in this franchise is it largely builds to each sequence, each little story that we have builds to kind of a confrontation. Like we see it kind of building, whether it's Toshio or Kayako, building towards something, and then suddenly like they appear, but it's like and then we like hard cut and we're out and onto something else. Like we're not really seeing, other than maybe like the schoolgirl later in the film, like we see her get like, but she's just pulled into darkness. It's not like this isn't like a slasher sort of film like Nightmare on Elm Street, where we see, the person struggling in bed and suddenly like, Freddy's, knives burst out of their sleeping chest or whatever the case may be. Like we're not seeing the actual kills. They're just kind of like an end to a particular point with kind of a scare. So I'm curious with you, because it seems like this was much more a struggle for you. When you watch a similar horror franchise, like I know in the last year or so, you plowed through the entirety of the Halloween franchise. Like, do you also find that you're getting to a point with those where it's just not scary anymore because it's essentially the same sort of thing? Like somebody is doing something and Michael shows up and kills them. Somebody's doing
Yeah.
something and Michael shows up and kills them. Like,
Well, I think I'll use that example because you're right on. Like it takes a bit. And I think the other example I'd bring up is Final Destination because I've much more recently watched those. And once you're through the second movie, I think there is those movies also lose their bite until maybe five, right? Where some things start to happen different. Six, there's some twists on the ideology and that actually make it more interesting to kind of sit through. If you watch them all at once, like I did with Ju-on, they become very repetitive very quickly. Watching them as they're intended when they come out, like I can see I probably would have had a better experience overall. The same thing with Halloween. But one of the reasons that I will come back and say maybe these movies aren't for me is because, to your point, the cerebral sort of end to a line of inquiry in these movies where it's just like hard cut to something new doesn't give me the visceral sort of satisfying end. And it's is it me just like lusting for violence? Maybe. I don't know.
so
I
American
just
of you.
it's so American. God, I'm so Western. Blah. But I want something more definitive and there is so little that appears definitive in these movies, with taking exception the transformation obviously of Kayako, of the family, of the people who come back as ghosts. Like I get that, but there's just there's a lot of stuff that I feel like culturally I is not for me. Like I'm not in touch with some of the filmmaking vibes in these movies. And that's fine. That's fine. I
Yeah.
found it harder to get through. Nonlinear structure, sort of without like this movie, the constant reset keeps me from developing a connection to any one character, even Rika. Like, but it jumps around. Their fate sort of lacks impact. I didn't feel like I had a connection with anybody. Bill Pullman, the exception, because it's Bill Pullman, and I know that no, not Bill Pullman. He's in the other one. I have too many grudges, too many Christmas.
I was gonna say, I don't know. Yeah.
But I could make the same argument for the weirdo Americanized version of Japan in the remake.
Yeah.
That things move in a way that is confusing without adding new meaning. So jumping between characters and moments loses emotional buildup for me.
But you don't have that problem in the first two because it's the same thing in those films. And in fact, if anything, we have more connection because Rika, that was one thing Shimizu did look at changing, because he knew that like with a feature theatrical film, audiences kind of want a central character you can kind of be following. And so Rika became kind of that, center point we see at the beginning, and there's kind of a midpoint, and then she follows through at the end.
Yeah. No, and I did have this problem with the second movie, right? Because and that was my sort of central thesis for wanting to recut those as two movies. I think they would have been, or as one movie. I think they would have been better taken as a whole. That I think everything I needed to get out of Ju-on, I got out of the very first one, and everything since then has been a retread that I find kind of snoozy.
Well, and to that end, I mean, it's important in sequels to be doing new things. So, I mean, did you like any of the changes that they made to what was going on with the story, as far as like how Kayako and Toshio were interacting, as far as the other ghosts appearing, things like that? Like, did you? I mean, it's not just all retreads, and so I'm curious, like, how did any of that strike you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not all retreads, but is it? is it qualified innovation, or is it a sort of predictable set of tools? I do think that, and I know why Kayako's crawl in particular has become, I don't know, that sort of visual metaphor for inevitability, and we get that in these movies. The way I think Kayako, and I brought up the coming out of the belly because I think that was an important moment. The way the movie uses that particular horror metaphor to allow us to better internalize the fact that that same concept of generational inevitability. You can't escape it because it's already inside of you. I thought was really good, and I think it reflects my understanding of, Japanese anxieties that actually feel like social commentary today, not in 2004 or 2002. That sort of unseen social decay. Another visual metaphor: the fact that they have Tokyo that is largely empty with the missing persons stuff all over the place. Like that was some extraordinary and beautiful sort of filmmaking. Like, I just thought it was a fascinating approach to this idea of isolation in urban life, and something that giant cities struggle with, Japanese sort of culture struggles with, I think, a lot. But I didn't. With the exception of that specific, coming out of the belly, there was still just a lot of Kayako and Toshio wide-eyed staring at victims, and I found it. I guess I found it a little tiresome. The three schoolgirls I thought was great, similar to what we had in the second movie with all the Kayakos showing up at the end through the glass, which I thought was a great nod. I just am not sure. It didn't affect me. That's I guess the sad part. It didn't. I never felt scared during these movies. I never felt emotionally connected. And I immediately after that, I sat down and watched Barbarian, and I've seen Barbarian once, and that movie still gets me. It still gets me every time because of the way, and I'll compare it specifically, the way it uses darkness. Now, obviously, it's a 2 decade later, more modern film, but that's not to say that it just has a different understanding of the way light and dark are used. And I think the V cinema versions of these movies did a better job at using light and dark than this film version of the movie. I've rambled a lot now.
Well, but that's interesting because largely these films are films that take place in bright scenes. Like, we're not seeing much in the way of darkness, right? Like, they're largely like daytime moments that are happening when somebody is killed. Like, there's not a lot of dark.
There's not a lot. We get some attics and closets and slow opening of sliding doors, and I think that might be part of the problem, because one of the most effective sequences in all the movies that we've seen so far, I think, was the first time she looks up in the attic with the lighter, and out of the darkness comes Kayako, and it is still one of the most effective jump scares for me in all of these movies, and nothing has achieved that. And part of it might be because of the kind of rejection of darkness as a utility trope in horror.
Well, I mean, while I can see that, I don't think that it means that, like, I just feel like that's kind of diminishing the power of what you can do in brightness with a horror film. The Shining is another great example where it's not a film that's full of dark. It's actually, brightly lit hotel rooms and hallways and everything. And I think,
Andy, of course, I'm not saying that you can't make horror movies with light.
Well,
what I'm saying is, like, the most effective thing in this movie series so far has been a use of light and dark in high contrast, and I haven't had anything since then. And I wonder if it's because they're doing something different because nothing in the light has been scary to me. And I go into these movies looking for a scary ghost story. And I'm especially impacted by paranormal stories. Like those stories scare me and this didn't. And I'm trying to figure out why. I'm not rejecting daylight horror movies, right? Not at all. You can absolutely do one. Midsommar is my favorite horror movie. A lot of that happens in broad daylight. So you
the
know
way that
better
you
than
worded
you
that,
know better than
no,
that about
hey,
me, Andy. Come
no,
on.
I'm using your words. You basically just said that. Like he doesn't know the utility of the trope of darkness. Like you're making it sound like because he didn't use darkness, he failed at making this film because he doesn't accept that he needs
No.
dark scenes to scare
I
people.
said
Like
I wonder if that rejection in this movie is part of what makes me second guess it. Not he's terrible at making movies because he doesn't use darkness. He actually made the scariest jump scare in the series. Like I totally acknowledge that. I'm just saying I didn't connect with this movie. It's not a great movie for me. It was a snooze. I wasn't scared. And the cultural fabric didn't make up for it for me. It didn't make up for that. It was a 92-minute movie that felt like 3 hours.
okay.
I'm trying to parse why that is. I really am. Like I went into this movie wanting to have a better impression of it than I did. So I'm really trying to learn. Like, what is it that made me not connect with this movie? Because so many people do.
I don't know.
I feel bad. I feel
What
like
do you wanna
you're
talk
taking
about?
this as a personal affront because
No,
you
it's just
liked
that
it.
I just don't know what else to talk about with you. Like, what else do you want to talk about then?
I want you to tell me what else you loved. Like what else really made it shine?
I mean, I love that we have more interesting, like there's new characters. Like we've got this sense of the older community in Japan that we have, which, you know, that's a whole element of stories in Japan of the older people who are dying alone, aren't getting taken care of, et cetera, et cetera. And that's one of these stories that we have here is we have this old woman who's now living in this place. And there is this sense of disconnect that she has with her children and the way that relationship unfolds with them begrudgingly taking care of her, right? Like the son and his wife are have her living there, and she's kind of like there's an element of her. I don't know. We see this a number of times in this film, and I found it to be kind of interesting. A number of times where we see older people who these spirits aren't taking, but they seem to connect with in some way. Now, eventually, our old lady does get taken by Kayako, but she's been in the house for a while. She seems to be suffering from the ghosts. I mean, she's obviously also having some serious health issues, as we see as we pan past the yard and we see the very dirty
It's bad news.
blankets that didn't get cleaned very well. And so we have this sense of her in this living in this space where she's somehow dealing with what's going on, right? And I find that to be an interesting element that they're not taking her. Same thing later in the film where we see Rika as she's back at, I don't know, the health clinic, I believe. And there's this old man that she's going to be helping, and she's talking to somebody, and through the glass we see this old man kind of like playing peekaboo with as we know, it's Toshio, who's must be standing outside by Rika, and as she then gets him in his wheelchair and is pushing him around, he keeps doing it, and we see a reflection and we see that Toshio is actually standing there. And so we have this sense that these older people are somehow seeing and connecting to them, but I don't know, is it a disconnect from their power or their story or what that is somehow kind of keeping them from taking the person? And again, eventually Kayako does come and take grandma, right? We see that.
Did Kayako take the old man? I can't remember now.
Nobody took that old man.
Nobody took the old man. He was fine.
Rika wheeled him to wherever it was she was taking him, and I mean, it was really mostly just focusing on Rika, but we're just getting a sense that lingering around her. And then we get, and that also leads to her, her understanding, I guess we'll say, toward the end of the film, that there is this ability to potentially like get closer to seeing the spirit world by putting your hands over your face, kind of in that peekaboo way, and peeking through your fingers, which is what she does and she realizes, like she does that when, I'm forgetting Kayako's husband's name, but when he's coming down, what is his name? Kayako, Takeo. When Takeo is coming down the stairs, and she kind of, looks away, and he kind of disappears, and then she's looking in the mirror, and then when she pulls her hand away, or she sees Kayako in her reflection, and that's when she kind of freaks out. And Kayako, it's almost like Kayako had been hiding within her or something. I'm not exactly sure what that was all about, but she kind of comes out of her, right? And so
yes,
I don't know. It's just an interesting connection that we're seeing with the older people, and the way that they maybe are closer to the spirit world by that point in their lives.
Okay, bear with me. Take Anthony Hopkins' performance in The Father. Okay? So you're watching The Father.
Okay.
Every time Anthony Hopkins goes into a strange dementia-related fugue state, Toshio is somewhere in the room. Okay? Like that, you just unlocked for me. I know you're not saying anything because I'm not making sense yet, but wait for it. Everything you're talking about makes me think that this entire experience of the curse, the grudge, particularly in this movie, could be seen as a really powerful metaphor for dementia, frankly, right? And the older these people are, the more affable the curse is to them, right? They're seeing sort of another world. The younger, the more they fight. We have fragment in time. We have disorientation. We've got repetition with variation, another trope that has been repeated in dementia movies. We've got loss of identity for sure, because all of these people, once they're taken by Kayako, by the curse, they are relegated to essentially identical to themselves. All of their identity and personality is stripped away. They just become the sort of zombie-ish cursed thing. The house itself becomes kind of a cursed organism that is it's unrecognizable to its inhabitants. And we've talked about the inevitability, the sort of generational inevitability, the inescapable decline of the mind, and all of that fear for the people who have not yet been subsumed by Kayako, by the curse, are scared because of their unabiding fear of losing control. There we go. That's my thesis. I think it's actually a movie about dementia.
Okay. I mean, I would wonder how the schoolgirls fit into all of that, but yeah, well, it's an interesting theory. I'll give you that. It's an interesting theory. I don't know what to say about that. This really.
Well, I mean, it resonates for me around the anxiety of cognitive decline, right? And it's both for those experiencing it and for those who get to witness it, right? It becomes. I think the schoolgirls could be a reflection of it, because they become unknowable to the people who are experiencing it. I think the entire world sort of becomes unfamiliar, whether you're living with it or you're living with those who don't understand you anymore. They're just as much sort of unfamiliar monsters. So, this is me reaching for kind of an interpretive overlay for this movie. I don't have any reason to believe Shimizu was intending this, but it does make me more curious, and it kind of emerges for me pretty naturally from the film. suddenly because of you.
Yeah.
This is your fault.
It's my fault. I also think it's interesting that there is this element of, like, as we come back to Rika, this is later in her life, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Her
I don't
hair
know.
is
We
different.
jump like 10 years. Like, it's the biggest jump we've ever had in this franchise, where largely
sure.
our jumps are all within, I don't know, a year or two. It's like 10 years, because the little girl that we follow later, Izumi, she is all grown up. Like, we first meet her when she's the young girl who's the detective's daughter.
Yeah.
And then when we come back to her later, like, she's a
Teenager.
high schooler.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's this point where Rika had, like, that whole final act with Rika, it's her friend who is now kind of that, again, school workers who have to make house calls. I still don't understand how that plays out in Japanese society, but she has to go to each of her students and have like a house call with them. And so she goes to Toshio, and Rika recognizes that what's happening and tries to run over to the house. And that's where she has this whole thing where Kayako comes out of her in the mirror and all this sort of stuff. And then that's where Takeo comes down the stairs with the knife. And that's like the last thing that we see is his bloody hand reaching for her face, before we now see her as essentially the dead body in the attic, right? She's wrapped up in plastic and's got the bloody, the eyes and everything, and the death rattle and everything. So it's almost like Kayako, I don't know, it was an interesting way to interpret, like, is this kind of how things go on with even other people that we've never really seen from the inside, but this is kind of what happens, where they're kind of, once Kayako or family kind of connect with them, that they thrust that person within the role of Kayako, and as just another opportunity to kind of like have the scenario play out, and they end up dead or missing or whatever the case may be. Like, because that's kind of what happens, is Rika essentially is forced in some way to replay Kayako's role and get killed by Takeo and put in a bag up in the attic. Like, that's essentially kind of what happens as that plays out, which I don't know. I mean, it speaks to the cyclical nature of this story. And I don't know, because we so rarely get to see what happens when people are taken. And so I'm just curious, like, is there more to that element of these ghosts, like, reliving their trauma through that other person's eyes?
Yeah. When do we see someone actually be taken that isn't hard cut away at that moment of action?
I mean, taken in what way? Like, when we see Izumi get taken, when the three girls are coming up behind her, it's Kayako who reaches through their little home shrine, grabs her by the head and pulls her into the darkness. Okay. So she's literally taken into the darkness. And then we just have her and her dad's like faces, like ghostly faces, like hanging over the things.
So we see a bunch of people taken up into the attic with their feet being dragged out or being hanging out and shaking. I guess that's true.
That's what happens to Riga's friend, Mariko.
Mariko. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. I guess, like, taken implies a couple of different things. Taken, like, moving their bodies out of scene, which is what happens. But what is the ghost? What is Kayako doing? Is Kayako, like, infusing themselves into the person? Is strangling the person? Like, we don't. I think that's an interesting question. Like, what is the verb that comes after taken? She takes them, and then what to them? Because some of them just end up dead, but some of them end up her paranormal acolytes.
Well, that's the thing. And even in the previous films, we were wondering about this, because some people definitely end up dead. whether they're like scared to death. Sometimes the way that people look when they find them, it looks like they were kind of terrified to death. Sometimes, as we find out with the young girl, like they ripped her jaw off and like shoved it into another person. Like they do some physical gruesomeness and mutilation, right? But then there are people who just completely disappear. And we have, like, the detectives in the previous film talked about that, where some people just, like, what happened to that person? And I have a feeling here, like, we're probably getting some of that. Like, I wonder if Izumi is one of these people who's just going to disappear. Like she's pulled into the darkness, but like, will they discover her body? Hard to say. It's kind of a strange way to kind of get taken, and you just don't know what's going to happen with that. But like the security guard earlier in the film, we know his body's discovered. Like they find his body, so they are finding some people's bodies. We don't see them finding most of the bodies, but we do see the couple, the son and his wife, the one who's living in the house. They're discovered in the attic. And they are the sort of bodies who look like they've been scared to death, right? They have that like kind of frozen, terrified look. So yeah, it's hard to say what's going on with the people. But then we have like the three girls. That's another one. Like we know that they went into the house, and
they walk out of frame behind. They're obscured by a wall, and we just hear screaming and construction noises.
And all we know is that Izumi had left. And that was that weird connection where Izumi and her father had across time as they see each other. Him when he's trying to burn the house down, her as a high schooler now, and they have that moment of recognition. And that's kind of like, and then he kind of goes mad. And she ends up getting tormented by these three girls. But these three girls, like their bodies, we know, like the school has been like, talking about the fact that what happened to the girls? Like nobody knows what happened to these three girls. Izumi's the only one who knows they went into the house. But it does make me wonder, if the police went into the house, would they actually find anybody? I don't know. I don't know if they'd find any bodies.
Yeah. I don't know. There's an interesting thing about the sort of paranormal rules in this movie. And I guess there was a question we talked about in the last one, which is when there are multiple Kayakos crawling toward the kid in the classroom, they were physical beings, right? You could touch them, right?
I think they're always physical beings. Yeah.
They're always physical beings. And I think that's one of the sort of sets of rules in these movies that is culturally challenging for me, because my expectation is so for this kind of movie is maybe not that there's an extension of energy that is able to move things and be haunting and all that, but that all these people are ghosts and are also still sort of people is interesting to me, because like the girls, like you asked the question, would they find the bodies? Presumably no, because those bodies are inhabited by Kayako adjacent spirit and are wandering around somewhere, right?
Yeah. I mean, who knows? And even if bodies get discovered, it doesn't mean that the spirits are going to now be able to be at peace, right? They're probably always going to be stuck in this situation.
And some of so there is a set. I just don't think I completely understand Shimizu's rules around what these things are capable of when they exist, when they're vaporware, when they're like the phantasm black hole of a shape of a person walking or hovering over the old woman with Rika standing or sitting bedside. How does that phantasm of Kayako connect to the body of Kayako that crawls up and down stairs? That's a thing I can't put words to, maybe yet.
Well, and even in the last film, we had a moment like that where Kyoko's mother looks up at the ceiling, and there's the whole ceiling has kind of a face of of Kayako up in the ceiling. So there are moments where we have these sorts of things. And it's interesting because the film starts more with kind of the black fog apparition version of Kayako. Like that's what
Totally.
we first see her like that at when the old lady is getting when she's kind of sitting on the old lady, right? And that's when she turns and looks at Rika and you just see the eyes through kind of that black fog. Same thing when we have Hitomi go back to her apartment and she is afraid of whatever the thing is in the bathroom and leaves, and the security guard goes up and she sees it on the camera that the black smoke kind of comes out and pulls him in. And even the detectives see that later. And then she comes out and like goes right up to the camera. Like, so it's, again, it's transcending technology. It's transcending everything. And and here's the thing, like, sometimes I feel like when you feel the need to apply rules to these things, that it can diminish some of the creep factor to it. You know, it's like, I don't know. For me, this all works because it doesn't necessarily make sense, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. I think I'm still just struggling to, apply an existing set of sort of cultural tools to make sense of the movie. I think the black fog thing is another, let me just say, just as an aside, this is a sidebar. The fact that the police could then watch the tape and see the same thing happen again, that the actual black fog was recorded on the video, was a huge win for me in this movie, because my expectation was that they would not be able to see it because that's a trope. Like, it's only seen by the protagonist of the scene, and then it would be erased forever because they want to make her unreliable. That's what I expected. They did not do that, and I really appreciate it, especially because in one of the remakes, they do exactly what I hate. It's terrible, and I groaned audibly. So that was a huge win.
But on top of that, and this is why I think that's so interesting, is because Toyama is the detective, and they bring him in, and he doesn't want to have to deal with it. He's the one who had dealt with the original Saeki murders.
Right.
And they bring him in, and they're showing him the tape, and they leave the room for some reason. And he is the one who watches it play out, but then that spirit kind of walks out and comes up to the camera as if Kayako's ghost is still living on the videotape. Right? Like, she comes up right up to the lens and it turns black, and then her eyes are there suddenly, and he freaks out and leaves the room. And so
now
that's what's interesting is like she's
that
still
just
there.
Because we've never seen them watch that far in the tape?
I didn't get that sense. My sense was that like I feel like they would have,
that it's poisoned the tape.
Something.
Kayako's poisoned the tape, and part of her still lives there and is able to interact improvisationally.
She's sensing him. Like, it's almost like she senses his presence, and because he was the one who had been involved, like, starts coming for him.
I don't know if that makes it better or worse for me, but that they broke that in a later version of this film, because it seems like, because the person that was watching the tape in the later version of the film might not have been the person connected to the curse, and in a way that Toyama was. And so that may actually make more rule-bound sense, but I don't like it as much.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
I do think it's interesting, just the way that plays out. It just speaks to the creepy way that these characters are doing new things, and like, I also love the way that we have when Hitomi, after she kind of like has that experience, she runs to the elevator to go back to her apartment and hops in, and as she's riding up, every floor she passes, we see Toshio's head standing outside watching her until she gets to her own floor, and then he's not there. And it just really gives you the sense that, like, these characters are just I don't know, they're just so haunting. And then he's, he finds her in her apartment. And so I don't know. I love the way that they kind of play with that, where they're omnipresent in some capacity, like they can really be anywhere.
Yeah. In the Sarah Michelle Gellar version, the next version, I think they do that same scene, but Toshio gets closer and closer with every floor. I think the first 2 floors, Toshio's standing back, you can see their full body. And then by the last floor, the whole head is in the window. And she doesn't see it at all because, come on. I mean, she was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She would notice.
There's another, now I just forgot what I was going to say. What was it?
I got something if you've lost it.
Yeah, go for it. I can't remember.
Tell me what you think of the sound. I think one of the things that this movie actually does directly improve upon, being a cinematic exploration, is the use of sound design, particularly around, we get the mewing of the cat, but the death rattle, but the sound design for minimalist scares. Were you affected by the sound?
I like it, and I think it pairs well with the music also to kind of deliver on a creepy vibe. The death rattles, the just the other sounds that kind of accompany, like whether it's kind of like her neck cricking as she kind of like moves her neck around and everything. There were a lot of those moments that they use quite well, and yeah, I think that it's. For me, I think the sound design is very effective. I like what Shimizu does with it here.
I think there's a case to be made that actually the sound of Kayako approaching the stairs, the cartilage ripping and breaking, is scarier than the visual of Kayako. I think that that's one of the things that the movie levels up, and in a really horrific way. I think I might be susceptible to gross sounds, and I notice every single one of them in this movie.
Yeah, there's not a lot of kind of specific sound paired with this particular scene, but I just love the visual, and for me, like, this was one of the key visuals that really stood out in this. That was just so haunting. Is when you have Rika. This is that last story when this is the midpoint story. She's at home, and like they had found her in the her boss Hirohashi had come to check on the old lady. He finds Rika essentially kind of catatonic in the corner. She ends up in the hospital. We know that they're kind of following her around. She goes home and she's trying to kind of like get things started again. And as she's in the shower washing her hair, you just see her hands reaching behind, and a third hand kind of coming up behind and like grabbing her, and she turns, and of course nothing's there. But then that leads to that. I love that moment. It's just so terrifying. But that leads to that moment where you have her in her room and Toshio appears, and that's a creepy Toshio, because that's like he's just standing over her bed. It's a great like full moment with Toshio, and then she looks up and sees that Kayako is like standing at the edge, the top of her bed, like leaning over, so her hair is practically in her face. And then Toshio does that great sit that he's always done, where he's sitting up with his knees and his hands are just kind of like wiggling around on his knees, just sitting at the end of the bed. Like, that was a great moment. And this was something else that I thought was interesting, is like, at this point, does Kayako in some way enter Rika? Because from what it seems is like, I'm trying to remember, do we see from that point on, then we go to Toyama, who goes to burn the house down, right? And that's when he has that flash of his daughter and everything. And so he no, I guess not. because then Kayako appears, and that was a great creepy moment where she's kind of crawling across the floor in the bedroom, and he makes a noise, and it's like she hears it. It's like she almost didn't even know he was there, but she hears him and turns and still comes at him, and he ends up making it out. But the other two detectives also happen to be in the house, and they end up getting killed by Kayako. So Kayako is still around. I was wondering if like we don't see Kayako again, and she's like in Rika, and then we have that 10-year jump, and that's when she like emerges again. But I guess that doesn't work if we have that scene there.
Well, especially because I think the second movie demonstrated for us that Kayakos are everywhere, really.
That's very true.
The house is poisoned. There's Kayako there, right? But Kayako's also with the people. Kayako is the representation of the contagion of the curse. And it always looks like Kayako, but there are my interpretation is there are lots of them. There are Kayakos in bed with you all the time, apparently. They're just crawling up the sheets. That was a good bit. Crawling up under the sheets. Always check the sheets. And you know, I want to go back just real quick to the hand coming up the back. This one, the one I remember is the Sarah Michelle Gellar one, where the fingers come out of the scalp, right? They're like in the head. They're not coming up the back as an external person. They're inside. And that's so gross. I actually think I like this one better, right? That she was in the shower with Rika, and then Rika turns around, she's not there. Like I like that moment better. But it is one of the most horrifying images that has come out of these movies. And I think it is one of the most sort of copied images in the other. It's certainly used in both of the direct remakes in some way, shape, or form.
Also, inevitably, in wherever they parodied it in one of the Scary movies.
Scary
like
Movie 4, I think. Yeah.
One of them had that same sort of thing. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, that plays really well. I like the way that all of that comes across. It's just a creepy element that we're getting. And it's interesting because that's another moment when we have Rika having that moment of realization later as she's doing the little thing with her eyes, and she's flashing to all of those moments where she recognizes now she can see it's always been Kayako all along. And she has that moment where she remembers in the shower and sees that, you know, we have that shot of Kayako kind of like putting her hand in her hair in the shower, like she's recognizing that was her. So yeah, it's creepy. It's interesting.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I guess as we get sort of toward the end, I think the structural narrative that I think does challenge a lot of Western horror is that by the last 10 minutes of the movie, we realize, oh, do you know what? Like everyone's fate is sealed. There's no one's safe, and there's really kind of zero resolution, and it's all pretty horrible. And the protagonist really should have been Kayako all along, because she's the one who really does fine in all these movies. And that's, I think, an interesting perspective, and I appreciate that. Like it's doing something that challenges the view.
Well, and I just like that it's an interesting take on a ghostly curse of somebody getting killed, where they just aren't going to stop. Like you can't find a resolution to bring that spirit peace so that they can go to heaven or whatever. It's like, nope, they're just going to stay there and just keep killing people. And that's pretty much, it's going to just never end. And God forbid you come into contact with anyone from that place, because now you're screwed.
Yeah. And, I mean, just one last point, we did a whole series on home invasion movies for Sitting in the Dark.
Yeah.
And they're horrible. And I watched like 15 of them over the course of 4 days. And it's a terrible experience. And this movie kind of should have been in that list, because this is sort of the original violation of personal space. You think when you get home, there are a number of those kind of sequences. When you get home, you're safe. But home is never safe again because it's cursed and it's always going to be horrible. And the call is coming from inside the house. It's just bad news.
Yeah, you're pretty much screwed in this one.
Yeah.
It's interesting to compare it to home invasion movies because there is, I suppose, an interesting element of that, and that I suppose you could say with a lot of haunted house movies, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. This one's interesting because there's like no character to the house. I think intentionally so. Like they took the most bland kind of Japanese standard suburban construction and they made it scary. And a lot of haunted house movies, the house itself has more just sort of production character. Like it's interesting to look at. This one is like you wouldn't think anything of this house by looking at it. You kind of get that when Rika first shows up and the house is sort of overgrown. But in the first two movies, the house is just a normal, the Saeki house. It's a normal house. And horrible things happen in normal places all the time. And that I think is the setup to, what makes this house important is not what it looks like or its sort of extrinsic character, but the fact that it is more than its suburban trappings.
Well, it's like the Poltergeist house in some sense, right? We talked about that a little bit on our upcoming CinemaScope episode about the house because it's and the area, because this takes place in, and you already mentioned kind of the emptiness, but this is Tokyo, but it's not downtown Tokyo. It's not kind of the central business district or areas that you see that are constantly full of people. Like these are the suburbs where you often have wide empty streets where people just aren't on. And then you have these houses that are kind of aspirational sorts of suburban houses where people want to live, where it's like you've got the takami mats on the ground floor, and then you have more kind of westernized bedrooms around the rest of the house. And so it feels kind of like a blend of Eastern and Western types of housing, but it's pretty standard and there's not anything that different with it. And so you're getting the sort of house that is very, in some way it's just kind of a bland, every house that you kind of see. It's not the creepy house from It or something.
Well, and you know what's interesting about that? The Geller remake, the where they move a bunch of Americans to Japan, the house is almost identical. It's clearly a different house, but the layout is exactly the same, right? You walk in, the stairs kind of steep up front. Yeah. It's all the same. The John Cho version that came out recently, the house is a haunted house. Like it's a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad house. And it's terrible, horrible, no good, and very bad the moment you see it, right? And I think that's the contrast. Like that's the very Western contrast. We're going to send a signal that this house is horrible the moment you see it. And the way it applies in the sort of Japanese horror is that we all live in the Kayako house. We all do, because it's every house. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting.
Have you seen the remakes? You've seen the Geller one.
I've seen the first one. I know. If I've seen another one, it was the second American, like the sequel, the Grudge 2, that came out like a couple years after that one did.
Okay.
I can't remember for sure if I saw that one. It's possible, but so that's all I've seen.
Yeah.
I've not gone down the road to kind of continue the exploration of this massive franchise.
It is a massive franchise. I'm still plugging away. I don't know how far I'm going to get after we do the Grudge 2. I think I'll watch the second American Grudge. After
and then
the
third American one was a direct-to-video.
Yeah, I probably am not going to go that far.
Which usually tells me I'm not going to find much in it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. So, all right.
Cool.
Well, that's what I got.
All right. Well, that's it for the conversation. So we'll be right back. But first, our credits.
Tab. Where's the tab? The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. Music by Quentin Koblenz, Guy Marr, Enon Zur, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Now you?
This is me, right? Hold on.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the arena where cinematic passions run high and friendly rivalries are born. In the wonderful world of film, there's nothing quite like the lively debates and good-natured grudges that unite us as a community of movie lovers. Perhaps you're a die-hard horror fan, playfully ribbing your friends who prefer a different slasher icon. Maybe you're a sci-fi enthusiast. Oops, just moved my mouse. Maybe you're a sci-fi enthusiast ready to engage in spirited discussions about your favorite franchise. Or you could be a devoted follower of a cult filmmaker, eagerly sharing your love for their quirky storytelling. And let's not forget the cheerful defenders of Hallmark Christmas movies, spreading joy as they champion the charms of their beloved holiday fare. No matter where your cinematic allegiances lie, Letterboxd is the place where you can celebrate your favorite films and engage in friendly debates with fellow fans. It's a platform where movie lovers gather to log, review, and discuss the films that inspire and move them. As a member of Letterboxd, you have the power to champion your chosen films and connect with like-minded fans. With a pro membership, you'll enjoy an ad-free experience and create custom lists to showcase your expertise. For the most dedicated, a patron membership allows you to personalize your profile and reviews, ensuring your voice stands out in the joyful fray. As a special offer for listeners of The Next Reel, we're providing an exclusive 20% discount on Letterboxd memberships. Simply visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd or enter the promo code NEXTREEL when signing up to join the fun at an unbeatable price. The stage is set, and the time has come to celebrate your cinematic passions. Whether you're playfully defending your favorite genre, director, actor, franchise, or the heartwarming appeal of Hallmark Christmas movies, Letterboxd is the place where you can share your love and engage in friendly debates that bring us all closer together as a community. Join Letterboxd now and let the good-natured grudges begin. Your favorite films are counting on you to champion their cause and to share the joy they bring with fans from all walks of life. It's time to step into the arena and celebrate the magic of the movies.
That was great. It nearly blew my head off in the beginning. That was a nice little surprise. Andy, how do we do at awards season? We get anything? Any notes of note?
You know, we're starting to get notes of note with this franchise by this point. It did have one win with one other nomination. At the Screamfest Film Festival, it did win Best Foreign Film. And then at the 2005 Saturn Awards, it won Best DVD Release. No, it was nominated for Best DVD Release, but lost to, of all things, Starship Troopers 2, Hero of the Federation.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think that's vindicating. I haven't seen Starship Troopers.
Maybe you
2.
should watch that first.
Yeah, I'm going to see that first and see if I agree.
Okay, I can't wait for your review.
So I'm going to do a double feature of Starship Troopers 2 and RRR. Which one do you think I'm going to like better?
What a weird double feature. I look forward to the connective tissue as to like how it makes sense as a double feator.
All right. Oh man. Okay. Well, speaking of high bars that may not be met, how did this thing do at the box office? Did you, using all of your budgetary investigatory prowess, find any information about how this movie did?
Well, for Shimizu's step up to features with the franchise, I still, unfortunately, have no idea what sort of budget they gave him. I was hoping that since it's a feature, there'd be more information, but there just isn't. That being said, I do have some release information. The movie premiered at Screamfest October 18th, 2002, then opened in Japan August 23rd, 2003, and here in the States July 23rd, 2004, opposite The Bourne Supremacy and Catwoman. This was a limited release, but played domestically until early December, going on to earn 325.7 thousand domestically and 3.3 million internationally, for a total gross of 6.4 million in today's dollars. Considering the franchise this film really spawned, I'd like to think it did well, but without the budget information, we just don't know.
Well, okay. I mean, I guess that's something. I hope by the Grudge 2, we're able to report some dollars. Otherwise, I'll have to give you a budget report on Starship Troopers 2.
I really have a sense that until we get to the American remakes, we're probably not getting anything.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. Yeah. I guess we'll find out next week, though.
Okay. Well, there we did it. I found it a little snoozy, but there's still some stuff to like. It's in there.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think by most accounts, you will find yourself in the minority with this because this is generally considered the best of the entire franchise. So if you don't like this, I'm curious if, as you watch the rest, how they will hold up, particularly since you've already tried 2 other Grudges. So,
well, let me tell you that there is. You'll see in my review of the Cho remake. It's not as good. I mean, I gave it the same review, but there are some things that they do with the characters in that movie that are appreciably sort of texturally different than the movies, and I really liked it. I thought that it was there's some stuff in there that's very cool, some character work that I think is really cool and interesting and different. So we're mining for diamonds here.
Well, see what you can find when you dig through the rest of them. All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings, but first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, closing out this series, but certainly not the franchise. It's Shimizu's Ju-On: The Grudge 2.
I have to get into character. Day 12. The curse is spreading. I don't know how much longer I can keep moving from house to house before something follows me home. If you're hearing this, I have one last piece of advice, something that might just save you. Go to truestory.fm/join. For just $5 a month or $55 for the year, you can become a member of the Next Reel family of film podcasts. And I know what you're thinking. How does that protect me from supernatural forces? Well, it doesn't, but it will give you early access to every show in the family. This one, The Film Board, CinemaScope, Sitting in the Dark, movies we like, all delivered through a special member feed that's completely ad-free. Why is that important? Because when you're alone in a cursed house and you hear footsteps upstairs, the last thing you need is to be interrupted by an ad for life insurance. Plus, your membership helps all these shows keep going so we can keep watching, keep talking, and keep warning you about things like it's behind you. Join now. Trust me, you never know when you'll hear that sound. TrueStory.fm/join.
Is that a translation of the death rattle? Is that what she's always saying?
That's what she's always saying. That's
TrueStory.fm/join.
Join. Okay, Letterboxd, Andy. Letterboxd.com/thenextreel. That's where you can find our HQ page where we have all the reviews that we talk about of the movies we talk about on the show. What are you going to do?
Well, I have a feeling mine's going to be higher than yours. I really enjoy this. This is of the ones I've seen, which is only the 2 before it and then that American remake, maybe the second. I just really can't remember. But, I really enjoy this one. I have a great time with it. So this is an easy 4 stars and a heart for me.
Okay. I came in at 2 stars, but I'll tell you, with our conversation, I'm going to give it 2 stars and a heart. Because I think there's more to it, and I like, I enjoy talking about it, and so there you go.
3 stars and a heart will be the average over at our account at thenextreel.com/letterboxd. No, at letterboxd.com/thenextreel. I said all that backwards. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film, and you can find Pete there at Pete Wright. So what did you think about Ju-On: The Grudge? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Okay. I think by the sound of your laugh, I think you have probably a tight, funny one.
It is. I think you should go first since
Okay.
you've got a whole thread.
Well, it's a thread. It's because okay. So the first one is 5 stars, no heart, from Pucky Yeti. Tyler spent
Pucky Yeti.
Pucky Yeti.
Okay.
Pukiety. Would you say that differently? Pucky Yeti?
No, I think that's fine.
Yeti?
Yeah, that's fine.
I as I said it out loud, I realized I maybe wouldn't spell it the way I'm saying it. This is very confusing. Anyway, Pucchietti says, Tyler spent most of the movie wailing whenever a ghost appeared, which really added to the experience for me. And I thought to myself, well, that's an interestingly personal kind of review. And I kept reading. The next one's 5 stars and a heart from Molly. The best part was listening to Tyler scream with terror every time someone got grudged. I love you, J-horror. I love you, Japanese ghost slowly crawling at the screen. I love you, all-consuming dread. And I thought, some people really like to watch Tyler. I wonder what Tyler thought of this review. And then I come across 5 stars and a heart from Tyler. I've never screamed so much through a horror movie. And I found myself so tickled by that 3 letterboxed exchange, especially because I didn't scream at all. And so it makes me really worry a little bit about Tyler. But grateful to Tyler for Pucchietti and Molly's watch. Sounds like he really added something.
That's a lot of fun. And I just want to reiterate the fact that all 3 of them were 5-star.
They're all ratings, 5 stars. So, yeah. So, I went high. For you, yeah. I went high. Yeah. I want you to tell me I have joy in my life.
Look at that. Well, I went 3 stars by Mason Kaiser, who is a name I know we've come across before. This one made me laugh. Like in Toy Story, old people just scramble around the house when you're not looking.
That's really good. That's really good.
Like that lady at the beginning, his wife, where she's just like, I was up all night. Your mom is just like running around the house, like making a mess.
So much trash. Thanks, Letterboxd.